Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome for today's tutorial, and today we are going to dive into basic mathematics, and the topic we are considering today is called what? Surd. So we are going to look at how to solve surd, know what is mean, find the rational function, the conjugate, and how to simplify surd. So just follow me as we go deep into this topic today. Okay. Now as you look at the word surd, what do you understand by the meaning surd? If you look at the square root of what? 4, right? Square root of 4 is going to give us what? It's going to give us what? 2, right? You know that this root 4 is giving us what? 2. Now, you can also see square root of 16 will give us what? 4. So at this point in time, this square root of 4 and 16 give us a whole number. Since this square root of these two numbers give us a whole number, they are not surd. Imply that this is not what? It's not what? Surd. Because it gave us a whole number as an answer, whereby this 16 also gave us a whole number as what? Answer. So this is not what? It's not surd. Now let's look at the square root of 2. What is the square root of 2? You know that the square root of 2 is not going to give us a whole number, right? So since the square root of 2 cannot give us a whole number, this cannot give us a whole what? Numbers. This cannot give us a whole number. Since the square root of 2 cannot give us a whole number or cannot be simplified again, we call it what? Is a surd. It's a surd because it cannot simplify further. It's a surd because it cannot give us what? A whole number. So what do we understand by the word surd? Let me define it. The definition. The definition of surd. The definition. Let's look at the definition of what? Surd. Based on my explanation, surd is an irrational word. Irrational root that cannot be simplified into what? Whole number. I said that what is surd? Surd is an irrational word root that cannot be what? Simplified in what? Into what? Whole number. They cannot be simplified into what? Whole number. That is what surd. From the example I gave here, you know that square root of 4 give us what? 2, right? And 2 is a whole number. Square root of 16 give us what? 14. And square root of 16 give us what? 4. And 4 is a whole number. Square root of 2 give us what? Give us a decimal. They are going to be in the form of a decimal number. So since they do not give us a whole number, this implies that root what? 2 is what? A surd. Because it did not give us what? A whole number. So let's look at the example of surd. Example of surd. Example of surd number 1. Square root of what? 2 is an example of surd. Number 2. Square root of 3 is an example of surd. Number 3. Square root of 5 is an example of what? Surd. Because this cannot be simplified into a whole number. If you square this guy, it's going to give us what? A decimal what? Numbers. If you square 3, it's going to also give us a decimal number. If you square 5, it's going to give us a decimal number. Since they did not give us a whole number, as this example 4 gave us a whole number, when we square 4, it gives us 2, right? So this 4 now gives us what? 2. So this guy is not a surd because it gives us a whole number. But this guy now, when you square root of 2, is going to give us a decimal numbers, right? If you square 3, it's going to give you also decimal what? Numbers. If you square 5, it's also going to give you what? Decimal numbers. So all these are what? Surd, because they are irrational roots that cannot be what? Simplified into what? Whole number. This cannot be simplified into whole number, and they cannot also be simplified into a simplest form. So that is the definition of surd. Now, as you have already know the definition of surd, let us look at how to simplify surd. Let us look at how to simplify surd. Okay, let's look at how to simplify surd. Now we're going to look at what simplification of our surd. We are looking at what simplification of surd. How are we going to simplify surd? Let's look at example. Example 1. Example 1, they say we should simplify square root of what? 8. How can we simplify this square root of 8? Let's look at solution. Solution. What they give us is what? Given. What they give us is what? Square root of what? 8, right? Now, for us to be able to simplify this surd, we are going to look at a number that will give us what? Perfect number, and the one that will give us what? An odd number or other numbers. We are going to look at number 1 number is going to give us what? A perfect number. The second one is going to be a number that we can leave it in a simplified form. So let's look at how to solve this guy. You know that square root of 8 is the same thing as what? You know that 8 is what? The same thing as what? 4 times 2, right? 8 is the same thing as what? 4 times 2, right? We are trying to simplify this surd. You know that 4 is a what? Perfect number, and 2 is what? 2 is also a number, right? But this 2 now is what? A number that cannot be simplified further because it's of the square root of what? 2. Now at this point in time, we have one perfect number and one other numbers. Now at this point in time, how are we going to get this guy? You know that the square root both affect what? 4 and 2, right? So this is going to be what? Let's separate it. Square root of 4 times what? Square root of what? 2, right? Now we have square root of 4 and we have what? Also square root of what? 2. By the law of multiplication in surd, we know that by the law of multiplication, by multiplication law of what? Surd. By multiplication law of surd, we know that square root of A times the surd of what? B is the same thing as what? Square root of what? A and B. So that's why we got this guy. That's why we got this guy. We try to simplify them. And this guy gives us what? Square root of 4 and square root of what? 2, right? Now, but we know that our 4 is what? Our 4 is a perfect number, right? Square root of 4 is what? Square root of 4 is going to give us what? 2, right? Then you cannot square this guy. If you square this guy, it's going to give us a decimal or number. So because of that, we leave it in this form. Because this is the end of this surd. So this times the square root of what? 2. So therefore our final answer becomes what? Imply that our final answer becomes what? 2 root 2. Therefore the square root of 8 is equal to what? 2 root 2. This is how to simplify this kind of what? Question using what? Surd. Now let's look at second example on how to simplify a surd. Example 2. They say we should simplify root what? We should simplify what? Root 50. First we want to simplify this root 50. Let's look at how to simplify it. Solution. Root 50, right? That's what they give us. But you know that for us to be able to simplify this guy, we are going to look at one of the numbers that will give you what? A perfect number. So that when you square it, is going to give you what? A whole number. And look at another number that when you square it, is going to give us what? A simplified what? Surd. So we know that this is 50, right? 50 is the same thing as what? Square root of 50 is the same thing as what? Square root of 25 times 2. Because 25 times 2 is still going to give us what? 50, right? That's why we have this guy. And at this point in time, you know that the square root is affecting both 25 and what 2, right? So this implies that this is the same thing as what square root of what 25 times square root of what 2. Because this 25 and 2 is inside the square root, right? So now we are trying to simplify them. That is why we are having what square root of 25 times also square root of what 2. Because the square root is on top of both 25 and what 2, right? That's why we have this guy. Now this implies that square root of 25 is what? Is 5, right? Square root of 2 is what? We give us decimal numbers. So because of that, we leave it in that form. So multiply by what? Square root of what? 2. So our final answer becomes what? 5 root what? 2. This is therefore square root of 50. When we simplify, it's going to give us what? 5 root 2. That is how to simplify this kind of solve. Now let's look at third example. Let's look at third example. Let's look at third example on how to simplify solve. Third example. Example 3. They say we should simplify the sort of what 12. How are we going to simplify this guy? Solution. Please pay attention. When we are trying to simplify a sort, you know that you have what? Square root of what? 12, right? For you to be able to simplify a sort, number one, you need to look at a numbers that will give you what? A perfect numbers from that given expression they give you. Look at number one number that will give you a perfect number. So when you square it, it's going to give you a whole number. Then you look at the one that is in a simplest form. Either 2 or 3 that cannot be later what? Simplified. That is how you are going to get the answer when solving what? Simplification of a solve. You know that this is what? Square root of what? 12, right? Square root of 12 is the same thing as what? Square root of what? 12 is what? The same thing as what? 4 times 3, right? 4 times 3 will still give us what? 12, right? That's why we are having 4 times 3. We are trying to simplify this 12. So they can get one as a perfect number and one as an odd number that cannot be later was simplified. Now at this point in time, note that square root of what? 4 times 3 is the same thing as what? Square root of what? 4 times square root of what? 3. Because the square root affects both 4 and 3, right? That's why it's also have square root of 4 and also square root of what? 3. But there was multiplication here, right? That's why I put this multiplication before this 3. Now at this point in time, know that square root of 4 is what? Square root of 4 is what? 2, right? Square root of 3 is what? We give us a decimal numbers. So because of that, I'm not going to what? Simplify it further. So we're going to have multiplication by what? 3, right? Now 2 times square root of 3 is what? Going to give us what? 2 root 3. Therefore, the square root of 12 is going to give us what? 2 root 3, which is the final answer when simplified square root of what? 12 using what? Solve. Now let's look at the last question on this simplification of solve before we move further to what we have next. Example 4. Example 4. They said we should simplify the square root of what? 72. We should simplify the square root of 72. How are we going to simplify this guy? I told us recently that before simplifying anything on solve, you need to look at one number that will give us what? A perfect number, and the other one that can give you what? An even numbers. So that when you square it, you have a whole number and also a root. Now we know that we have a square root of what? 72, right? 72, you need to check, you need to think about it. What can you multiply that will give you 72? Which two numbers can you multiply that will give you 72? In which one is a perfect number and the second one is a number that cannot be simplified further using what? Solve. So let's look at it. You know that square root of 72 is the same as what? Square root of what? If you look at 72, you can also have 72 by multiply 36 by 2, right? Because 36 times 2 is equal to give us what? 72, right? But now we are having square root of 36 times 2. You know that the square root affects both 36 and 2, right? Since the square root affects both 36 and 2, we can also simplify further that square root of what? 36 times, there's times here, right? Times square root of what? 2, right? This guy is the same thing as this guy, but we just want to separate them. Now look at 36 is a perfect what? Square. Because square root of 36 is going to give us what? 6, right? And square root of 2 cannot be simplified further, right? So we leave it in that form, which is 2. Now 6 times square root of 2 is going to give us what? 6 root 2. And this is the final answer when simplified square root of what? 72. Now let's move to the next section of our. Now let's look at the addition of surd. How to add surd. Let's look at how to add surd. Addition. Addition of surd. Addition of surd. Example 1. We say add 3 root 2 plus what? 2 root what? 2. Note, before you can add a surd, you can only add a surd when they have the same word square root. You can only add a surd when they have the same word base. That's how to add a surd. But you cannot add a surd that are not in like component. But you can only add a surd that are in what? Like component. So let's look at how to add this kind of surd. If you look at this surd now, they are in like what? Component. Because they have the same square root of 2 and the same square root of what? 2. So this kind of surd can be what? Added. Since they have the same word base, square root of 2 and also square root of 2 on each of the word terms. So let's look at how to add this kind of surd. Solution. Know that they give us what? 3 root what? 2, right? Plus what? 2 root what? 2. 2 root 2. Now if you look at this question, know that the first part we have 3 root 2, right? The second part we have what? 2 root 2. You know that something is common, right? Root 2 and also what? Root 2. Since they have the same base, root 2 and what? Root 2, right? We are going to add this surd because they have what? Like component, which is what? Root 2 and root 2. So we are going to have 3, this 3 is a coefficient of this surd, root 2. 3 plus the coefficient of the second surd, which is what? 2, right? Then we are going to take only one base of the word surd because they are in the same word base, which is root 2. We take only one of the word base, which is root 2. So 3 plus 2 is what? 5, right? Root what? 2. And this is the final answer on how to what? Add a surd. You can only add surd because they have what? The same base. And that's why we are having this answer 5 root what? 2. This is how to add a surd. Let's look at second example on how to add a surd. Let's look at second example on how to add a surd. Example 2. Example 2, they say we should add the surd 5 root 3 plus 2 root 2. Now, sometimes they can give you this kind of question and check your capability if you understand what surd is all about and the addition of surd. If you look at this question, how are we going to solve this kind of question? Let's look at the solution. If you look at this question, this is what? 5 root 3, right? This particular first surd is in what? Root 3. You have the second one, 2 root what? 2, right? So this kind of surd, they did not have like terms. Their base is not in the same word parameter. Their base is not in the same word numbers. Their base is not in the same word terms. So because of that, this surd 5 root 3 plus 2 root 2 cannot be added. Cannot be added. Cannot be what? Added. This surd cannot be what? Added because it does not have the same base. That's why we cannot add this surd. Just take note. Because sometimes they can give you this kind of question and check if you understand the addition of a surd. Now let's look at example 3 on how a surd. Example 3 on how to add a surd. Please pay attention to this tutorial. And I want you to get the best. You can also practice each of these questions by yourself. Now example 3. Example 3 says we should add Add the salt of what? 4 root 8 plus 4 root what? 2. They give us this kind of question to do what? Add. How are we going to add this kind of salt? You need to understand that this salt can be added because you know that this is what? 8, right? But before you can add this kind of salt, you need to simplify this guy. Because this guy can simplify what? Further, right? So then you can have to add this salt. Solution. We have what? 4 root 8, right? Plus what? 4 root 2. Now, firstly, we are going to simplify this first one. Firstly, simplify what? Simplify 4 root 8. For to simplify 4 root 8, you know that this root 8 now can simplify what? Further, right? And root 8, let me wipe this side, sorry. Now, for us to simplify this guy, 4 root 8. 4 root what? 8. This guy is going to give us what? You see our 4 here, right? You know that root 8 is what? The same thing as what? 4 times 2, right? 4 times 2, because we are trying to simplify this guy. And for us to simplify this guy now, we are going to look at one of the number that will give us what? A perfect number, a perfect square. So that when we square, we have a whole number. And one of the numbers that can give us a number we cannot be simplified further, which is what? 2. No, at this point in time, we are having what? 4, right? 4, this square is affecting both 4 and 2, right? Times what? Square root of what? 4 times square root of what? 2. Now, we still have what? 4, right? Times square root of 4 is what? 2, right? Square root of 2 cannot be simplified further. So we don't put it there saying what? Square root of 2. Now, 4 times 2 is what? 8, right? Times root 2 is what? Root what? 2. Therefore, we are having that our 4 root 8, our 4 root 8 is the same thing as what? 8 root what? 2. Now we are going to simplify this guy, right? In the simplest form, which is this guy, right? Now, imply from this question they give us, which is what? 4 root what? 8 plus 4 root what? 2. Now we know that our 4 root 8, when we simplify further, we have what? 8 root 2. So we are going to put this guy in place of this what? 4 root 8. So we are going to have what? 8 root what? 2. Plus, there is plus here. Let's try to put this plus here. Then after that, we have here what? 4 root what? 2. Now if you check out, they have the same what? Base. They have the same square root of sort of 2 and sort of what? 2. This is root 2 and what? Root 2. They are in the same what? Base. So now we are going to add their coefficient together and take only one of the base. So now the coefficient of this first one is what? 8, right? Plus the coefficient of the second one is what? 4, right? Now we take only one of the base, which is what? Root of what? Root of what? 2, right? Now 8 plus 4 is what? 8 plus 4 is what? 8 plus 4 is going to give us what? 12 root what? 2. And this is the final answer. And this is the final. This has to simplify this kind of sort by addition. When you need to simplify this guy, because it's in the form of what? Simplifying it, then you can add them together. And this is our final answer when solving this kind of what? Question. Now let's look at next thing, which is what? Subtraction of what? Sort. Subtraction of sort. Before you look at subtraction of sort, let me just add one example. Example 4. Because this one is very important. Example 4. On the addition of salt. They say you should add root 2 plus 3 root 2. Because some students will be confused about this kind of question. That's why I said let me just add it to the example of addition of salt. Once we're able to add this salt together, let's continue. Solution. What they give us is what? Root what? 2, right? Plus what? 3 root 2. If you look at this question, they can be added. because they have the same word base, which is root 2 and root 2, right? In both sides of the question. Now, if you look at this guy, for us to be able to add a surd, they must be in the same word terms, right? Which is the same base, right? Which is the same base of what? Root 2 and also root 2, right? Now, at this point in time, we are going to add their coefficient together and take only one of the base that is common between the surd. Now, look at this root 2 have a coefficient. Coefficient are numbers in front of a variable or a root. You know that this coefficient of this guy is what? 3. Because 3 is in front of this word, root 2. Coefficient of this root 2 is what? Is 1. There is an invisible one here. Because 1 times root 2 is the same thing as what? Root 2. So the coefficient of this guy is going to be what? 1. There is invisible one here. That's why I take the coefficient 1. 1 plus the coefficient of this guy is what? 3, right? Then we take the base that is common, which is what? 2. Root what? 2. So 1 plus 3 is what? 4, right? Root what? 2. And this is the final answer. Please just pay attention to this solving, because sometimes they used to bring this kind of question. You know that this guy have an invisible one. That is why I will take the coefficient as 1. And when we added the coefficient, we have 1 plus 3. And we take a common base, which is what? Root 2. Then 1 plus 3 is 4, right? Root what? 2. This has to solve this kind of what? Solved by what? Addition method. Now I look at subtraction method when solving a surd. Subtraction method when solving a surd. Okay, now let's look at how to subtract a surd. For you to be able to subtract a surd, they must be in the same word. They must have the same like terms. Now, example 1 says you should subtract the surd. Subtract the surd 3 root what? 7 minus what? 2 root what? 7. Now, for us to be able to subtract a surd, they must have the same word base. They must have a like terms. And now you know that they have the same word square root of 7, and this is have the same word root 7, right? So this surd can be subtracted since they have the same word like terms of what? Root 7, root 7. Now let's look at the solution. Solution. Root what? 7 minus 2 root what? 3, right? Sorry, minus 2 root what? 7. Now, you subtract their coefficient. You subtract what? What I want to subtract is their coefficient, and we take only the word base. Only one of the base. The coefficient of this first one is what? 3, right? Minus, since there is minus here, minus. The coefficient of the second one is what? 2, right? The coefficient are numbers in front of the variable or the root. The number in front of this root is 3. The number in front of this root is what? 2. So we are subtracting 3 minus what? 2. Now we're going to take only one of the base since they are in the same base. Base what? Root of what? 7, right? Root of what? 7. Now at this point in time, 3 minus 2 is what? 1, right? Root what? 7. I know that 1 times root 7 is the same thing as what? Root 7. So this is the final answer. This is how to subtract a surd. Now let's look at the second example on how to subtract a surd. The second example on how to subtract a surd. The second example, example 2, it says you should subtract the surd 9 root 3 minus 4 root what? 3. If you look at this surd, it can be subtracted because they are in the same word root, which is root 3 here, and here is also what? Root 3, right? So this surd can be what? Subtracted. Solution. What they give us is what? 9 root what? 3, right? Minus what? 4 root what? 3. This is the question they give us. And for us to be able to subtract this kind of surd, We are going to subtract the coefficient, the first coefficient minus the second coefficient. The first coefficient here is what? Is 9, right? Minus the second coefficient is what? 4, right? We are going to take only one of the root. Since they have the same root, we are going to take only one of the root, which is what? Root 3. So 9 minus 4 is what? 5 root what? 3. Because there is root 3 here. And this is the final answer when subtracting this kind of question using what? Surd. Now let's look at the third question on how to subtract a surd. Example 3. We said you should subtract the surd 2 root what? 12 minus root 3. You say you subtract this kind of surd 2 root 12 minus root 3. You know that for you to be able to subtract this surd, they must have the same word root. This root 3 is already in a simplified form. You cannot simplify it further, right? But this root 12 can be simplified what? Further. So let's look at how to simplify this root 12 first so that we check if it's in the same base. Let's look at the solution. Solution. What they give us here is what? 2 root what? 12, right? Minus root what? 3. Note that firstly, let's first simplify this guy. Let's simplify what? Let's simplify this guy, which is what? 2 root 12. First we simplify 2 root 12. 2 root 12. It is the same thing as what? There is 2 here, right? Root 12. If you look at 12, for us to simplify 12, we are going to look at one of a perfect number. That when we square, you give us a whole number. And a number that cannot be simplified rather in what? A simplified what? Form. So you know that 12 is the same thing as what? 4 times what? 3. I know that 4 is a perfect what? Root. Because this root is on top of the 4. 4 is a perfect root. Because we square a 4, it's going to give us what? A whole number. That's why we are having this guy here. This implies that you still have these 2 here, right? Root what? 4. Root 4 is what? Root 4 times what? Root what? 3. These values affect both what? 4 and affect both what? 3. That's why I try to just simplify it in the simplest form. Root 4 times what? Root 3. This implies that 2 times what? Root 4 is what? Root 4 is what? 2 times root 3 is what? Root 3 cannot be simplified further, so we leave it in that same form. Root 3. Then equals to what? 2 times 2 is what? 4, right? Root what? 3. Therefore, 2 root 12 equals to what? 4 root 3. Now we are getting 4 root 3. Let's look at how to subtract this guy. Okay. From here now the question what they give us? 12 root what? 12, right? 2 root 12 minus what? Root 3. And we know that when we simplify this guy, 2 root 12, what do we have? We have what? 4 root 3, right? 4 root 3. 4 what? Root 3, right? Minus. There is root 3 here, right? Root 3. Now they are already in a form that we can subtract them. If you look at this guy, they are in root 3 and also in root 3, right? For us to subtract this kind of surd, we must subtract their what? Coefficient. And the coefficient of this guy is what? 4. The coefficient of this root 3 is what? 1, right? So we are going to have what? 4 minus what? 1. This 4, coefficient of this first one minus coefficient of the second one. There is an invisible 1 here. Because 1 times this root 3 is what? The same thing as root 3. So we are going to take that 1, the invisible 1 here. That's why I have 4 minus what? 1. And since they are in the same word, root 3, you take only one of the word root, which is what? Root what? 3. So 4 minus 1 is what? Is 3. Times the root is what? Root 3. And this is our final answer on how to subtract this kind of word surd. Now let's look at the next subheading under surd. Let's look at the next subheading under what? Surd. The next subheading under surd. I want you to pay attention to this tutorial so you can get the best out of it. You can also practice this question by yourself. Check how I derive all these questions so that you can also know the process and the method involving when solving this kind of question. Now let's look at the next subheading on this solve. We have what? Rationalization. Rational what? Rationalization of what? Of surd. That is the next subheading we are going to consider now. The rationalization of what? Surd. I'm going to explain what it means. Example 1. They say we should rationalize the surd to what? Root 3. They say we should rationalize this surd. Now this surd is not in a right parameter. Why? Because the denominator is with what? Root 3. And it's a taboo to have a question on surd in which that the denominator involves what? Root 3. So for us to clear this kind of fraction and this kind of question, we must rationalize the surd. And what does it mean to rationalize the surd? To rationalize a surd means that the process in which we involve multiplying the denominator by the root and also the numerator, so for us to be able to eliminate the surd on the denominator. That's what we mean by rationalizing a surd. So then we have to solve this guy using rationalization method. Solution. We have what? 2 over what? Square root of what? 3, right? Now for us to rationalize this guy, we know that we have what? 2 all over square root of what? 3. Now for us to clear this guy, we are going to multiply what? Multiply both the denominator and the denominator by what? The square root of 3. We are going to multiply both the up and the down by the square root of 3 so that we can eliminate this square root from the down of this question. And we know that what we have here is what? 2 all over what? Square root of what? 3. This is the question they gave us. So for us to eliminate this root 3, we are going to multiply both the up by what? Square root of what? 3. And the down by what? Square root of what? 3. This process now is called the rationalization of what? Surd. Now, you know that 2 times square root of 3 is going to give us what? 2 square root of what? 3. Root 3 times what? Root 3 is going to give us what? Root 3 times root 3 is going to give us what? All over what? Root what? 9. Note that based on law of what? Surd, one of the laws states that root A times root B is equal to what? Root A and B. And at this point in time, we know they have root A, right? And this guy represents like our root B. That's why you have root A times root B is going to give us what? 3 times 3, which is what? 9. That's why we have this what? 9. Now, imply that we have what? 2 root what? 3, right? All of what? 9 that we have here. All of square root of 9, right? That we have here equals to what? 2 root 3 is already in a simplified form that cannot simplify further. So we leave it in this form. All over. Square root of 9 is what? Square root of 9 is what? 3. And this is our final answer. At this point in time, the surd is already being what? Rationalized. So that is how to rationalize a surd. Now let's look at second example on how to rationalize a surd. Second example on how to rationalize a surd. Before we move on to the next one and we call it a day. But I want you to practice all this we are doing now so that you can get the best out of this tutorial. Now let's look at the second example on how to rationalize a surd. Example 2. Example what? 2. They say we should rationalize the surd of what? 7 all over what? Square root of what? 2. We should rationalize this surd. For us to rationalize this kind of surd, you need to understand that this sort, the same method what we did, this sort is going to multiply by the what? Up one and also by the what? Down side. So this implies that solution 7 all over 2, 7 all over square root of 2, right? Multiply by what? Root 2. What our major aim is to eliminate this root 2, then shall multiply by what? Root 2. On the top, and also multiply the downside by what? Root 2. Now, 7 times root 2 is what? It's going to give us what? 7 root 2. All over. Root 2 times root 2 is what? It's going to give us what? Square root of what? 4. Because 2 times 2 is what? Is 4. That's why I do what? Root what? 4. Now, imply that 7 root 2 all over what? Root 4 that we have here is going to be what? 7 all over what? 7 root 2 all over what? Root 4 is what? Square root of 4 is what? 2. And this is the final word answer. This is how to rationalize this kind of question using rationalization word method. Let me just give us another one example on this rationalization of surds before we move on to the next one. Before we move on to the next one. Now let's look at example 3. Example what? 3. They say we should rationalize 3 minus 2 root 2 all over what? Square root of 3. They say you should rationalize this word surd. For us to rationalize this surd, at this point in time, this surd is not in a right parameter because it involves a square root as the denominator. So this surd is not what? Accepted. So for us to eliminate this, the root of 3 under the denominator is called rationalization of what? Surd. So let's look at how to eliminate it. We can only eliminate it by multiplying this same root 3 by root 3 by the down and also of the top of the question. So let's look at this solution. We have what? 3 minus what? 2 root 2 all over what? Root what? 3. So for us to eliminate it using the rationalization method, 3 minus 2 root 2 all over what? Root 3. We multiply by what? Root 3. 6 root 3 is what we are trying to eliminate. Multiply the up by the 3 and also eliminate what? Multiply the downside by what? By root 3. By root 3. Now we are going to have what? Root 3 multiplied by 3 is what? It's going to give us what? 3 root 3. Root 3 multiplied by minus 2 root 3 is going to give us what? Root 3 multiplied this guy is what? This multiplied by this is going to give us what? Minus 2 root what? 3 times 2 is what? 6, right? All over what? Root 3 times root 3. In the denominator is going to give us what? 9. So because 3 times 3 is what? 9. That's why I have what? Root 9. At this point in time, I'm going to have what? 3 root 3 minus what? 2 root 6. And we have an denominator. And this guy cannot simplify further. All of us, root 3 is what? Root 9 is what? Root 9 is what? 3, right? Root 9 is what? 3. And this is the final answer. This is the final answer of how to rationalize this surd. Now let's look at the last point before we end the tutorial today. Let's look at the last subheading that we have on rationalization on surd. Let's look at the last subheading. The last subheading we are going to look at is how to rationalize a surd using what? Conjugate method. How to rationalize a surd using what? Conjugate method. Okay. Rationalization of surd using what? Using what? Conjugate method. Now, for us to be able to rationalize a surd, there are some surds that we need to use the conjugate method to rationalize it, so you can get the correct answer. And when we talk about conjugate, I talk about the opposite sign of the operator involving in the surd. Now let's look at example for proper understanding. Example 1. They said we should rationalize the surd 2 root 3 all over what? 3 minus root what? 3. Now if you look at this question, it's 2 root 3, right? All over 3 minus root 3. Because there is a root 3 here on the denominator, this surd needs to be rationalized. Because it's a taboo to have our solution as a root form which involves the denominator in surd. So now let's look at how to rationalize this surd, how to eliminate this root from the denominator. And we can only eliminate this root by what? Rationalizing it using what? The conjugate method. Now, solution. Notice, wait about the conjugate. For example, conjugate of A minus B is equal to what? B is equal to what? A plus B. The conjugate is the opposite sign that involves two terms. You know the opposite sign of this A minus is what? The operator here that involves this parameter is what? Minus, right? So the opposite sign is what? Cross. That is what the conjugate is all about. For that we can have also root 2 minus x. The conjugate of root 2 minus x is what? Root 2 plus what? X. Go by taking the opposite sign of the operator that connects the two terms in our expression. Also, for example, if you have this guy, now, 3 minus what? Root 3. The conjugate of this 3 minus root 3 is what? Is what? 3 plus root 3. So we're going to use this conjugate, this guy now, to multiply both the numerator and the denominator for us to be able to eliminate the root in the denominator of this expression. So now you know that from the question they give us, what do you have? 2 root what? 3, right? All of what? 3 minus what? Root 3. Now we're going to multiply both the up and the down by the conjugate of the denominator we are trying to eliminate, which is what? 3 plus what? Root 3. So you multiply this guy by what? 3 plus what? Root 3 all over. Multiply this down side by what? 3 plus what? Root 3, right? Now at this point in time, let's start to expand this guy. Now you know that this guy is in one form, 2 root 3. 2 root 3 multiplied 3 is what? 2 times 3 is what? We are going to have what? 6, right? Root what? Root 3. Since there is root 3 here. 2 root 3 times 3 is going to give us what? 6 root 3. 2 root 3, there is plus here, right? 2 root 3 times this guy. We are going to have what? 2 times, there is an invisible one here. 2 times 1 is what? 2. Root 3 times what? Root 3 is what? Root 9, right? All over. We come to this downside. If you look at the downside, we have 3 here, right? And we have 3 here. We have root 3 here, and we have root 3 here, right? But the only difference here is that minus and what? Cross. That is the only difference. And this is letting us know that this is in form of what? Difference of 2 square. Since this guy is in form of difference of 2 square, and we know that minus times plus is going to give us what? Minus, right? We are going to only take only one of the expression, which is what? 3 minus what? Root 3, right? You square it. Because if you expand this guy, we're still going to have this guy on the denominator. So you square it. Now let's look at how to expand this question to the simplest form. Now, from this point, what do you have here? We have what? 6 root what? 3, right? Plus what? 2 root what? Root 9. 2 root what? 9, right? All over. What do you have here? Bracket 3 minus what? Root 3 square, right? Now, let's look at it. 6 root 3, right? Plus 2, right? Root 9 is what? Root 9 is what? Square root of 9 is what? Square root of 9 is 3, right? all over, we come down, this is what? 3 minus square root of 3, right? Raised to the power of 2, right? If you understand our law of what? Indices, that if you have something like a b raised to the power of square, this is a power rule in indices. The power is going to affect everything in the bracket. This is going to be what? A square, right? And what? B square. We are still going to apply this rule based on this question. You know that at this denominator we have what? 3 minus what? 3 minus a raised to the power of what? 2. So this 2 is going to affect this first line, and it's also going to affect this second line. So we are going to have what? Bracket 3 square, right? There is minus here, right? Minus. This part is going to also affect this line. Bracket root what? 3 square. I hope you understand. Based on this power rule in indices. Now at this point in time, we are still going to have what? Equals to, on the denominator we have what? 6 root what? 3, right? Plus what? 2 times 3 is what? 6, right? All over. Now you come to the denominator. Square root of 9 is what? Square root of 3 is what? 9, right? There is minus here, right? Minus. Now if you look at this guy, you know that 2, the power 2 will cancel the root, right? We are going to left with what? Bracket what? 3, right? Now, this implies that 6 root 3 plus 6 all over 9 minus this is minus times this is minus 3, right? 9 minus 3 is what? 6, right? So our final answer is this. But you can also put it in a form like this. You can also put this is the final answer. 6 root 3 plus 6 all over 6. But if you want to just factor out 6, you can bring it like this. 6 bracket. Now, 6 bracket what? We have root 3 here, right? Which is this guy. Plus, you know that there was 6 here, but you factor out 6, you just put 1. Right? All over what? 6, right? On the denominator. And you know that 6 can cancel what? 6. So our final answer can also be what? Root 3 plus what? 1. And this is also the final answer. This is how to rationalize this function of the surd using conjugate method. Thank you very much for being part of this class today. And if you have any question or any topic you want me to have a video on, you can drop on the comment section. And if you are not subscribed to this channel, I would also like you to subscribe to this channel. Share this video to your colleagues, to anyone in need of mathematics. And God bless you. I'll see you in the next video of our tutorial. God bless you.